I call to order the regular meeting of the Assembly for the Municipality of Anchorage for September 24th, 2013. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Assemblymember Birch.
Here.
Assemblymember Dabowski.
Present.
Assemblymember Steele.
Here.
Assemblymember Starr.
Here.
Assemblymember Flynn.
Mr. Flynn may be joining us on the phone.
Assemblymember or Vice Chair Trombley.
Here.
Chair Hall.
Here.
Assemblymember Gray Jackson.
Honored to be here.
Assemblymember Johnston.
Here.
Assemblymember Honeman.
Here.
Assemblymember Cheney.
Here.
Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Trombley, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have no minutes from previous meetings, so we're ready for the Mayor's report. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, no long report today, sir. Just on the first, you'll be receiving the budget books for the proposed operating and capital budgets. So in just a week, we'll have that presentation for you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the Assembly Chair's report tonight, I want to begin by extending an apology about the confusion that occurred at the end of our last meeting. We had a ruling made by the chair that was actually a motion to override by the body, and we started with the it was a 7-4 vote, and I continued. Then I heard next to me what I assumed to be no, it takes a supermajority, which it does not. The chair is overridden with a simple majority, and by the time we had got all the confusion straightened out, the meeting was over. But what we have done in the meantime is we have had the Assembly attorney prepare a list for us of specific items that it takes a supermajority in order to be able to override a rule of the chair, and we want to have that happen again in the future. So once again, my apologies for the confusion that occurred, and we've got a mechanism in place to avoid that. I also want this evening to make a particular thank you to a couple of boards and commissions that we have their reports in our packet this evening. The Board of Equalization and the Anchorage Equal Rights Commission. These are two groups that do a tremendous amount of work for us as an assembly and for you as a community. And I just want it to be made very clear how much we appreciate the fact that they do the job they do, particularly as well as they do their jobs. And we've got two great reports from them. And also a call out of thanks to a number of boards and commissions that we will be continuing this evening for the service of individuals that serve on those as well. With that, Mr. Birch.
No report.
Ms. Dembowski.
Mr. Chairman, tonight I'd like to make a couple disclosures. We have item 14E concerning state grant funding passed in Senate Bill 18. Among the money to be appropriated are two line items for AFD relating to communication and data system upgrades, as well as wildland fire apparatus replacement. Additionally, item 95 is an appropriation for radio equipment that will be used by AFD. I have no financial interest to disclose, but as we know, my husband's an Anchorage firefighter, so I wanted to put that in front of the body. I'm confident that I can act in the public interest on these items, and I'll wait for your ruling.
Amy, I want to thank you for your continued diligence. We appreciate the disclosure. As with other items of this nature, I recognize no conflict for you, and I would ask if the body concurs. Seeing no objection.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Steele.
No report, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Starr.
I have no report.
And I don't believe that we have Mr. Flynn on the phone yet. We're working on the phone bridge. Mr. Trombley?
The Ethics and Elections Committee is scheduled to meet this Thursday from 11:30 to 12:30 at City Hall to discuss the rewrite, or not the rewrite, but some changes to the ethics law and taking up the changes recommended by the Anchorage School Board, the policy committee over there. So Mr. Honeman, Mr. Trainee, and Mr. Starr, as members of the committee, I request that you attend the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Trombley, I want to give my appreciation to you and the Ethics Committee as well for doing a great job on that particular issue for us. It seems that you've managed to come to a very suitable reconciliation for that issue. Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to let the body know that the request for proposal process to select an independent auditor, which is required by charter, that we have an independent auditor review the financial statements of the municipality. But anyway, that process is moving forward. There's an evaluation team set up, and hopefully we'll have before us a contract award in the near future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Honeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We, Public Safety Committee meeting, as you recall, last we had fairly healthy dialogue on many a topic, one of which, of course, is before us tonight in our old business. I can share the comments now, or I can share later of the Public Safety Committee. What's your...
Why don't you go ahead, Mr. Honeman?
Okay. The Public Safety Committee did meet on the matter. I heard from residents in the community as well as the representatives from the Walmart Superstore, the new business operating at Molden and DeBar next to the Fred Meyer. And as a matter of record, the Public Safety Committee is not opposed to the passage of the resolution supporting the Walmart's transfer liquor license and the conditions that they have displayed and the diligence that they've given to the concerns of the community have been met. And so the Public Safety Committee recommends to the body that we approve the transfer of the liquor license. Also, we will be meeting for October. I just had it here, but my phone went to sleep. It is the third Wednesday, which is October 16th. And I have no doubt that we'll have another busy agenda. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Honeman. Ms. Johnston?
No report, thank you.
Mr. Trainee?
Mr. Chairman, we had a work session on Friday on the ordinance we have in front of us tonight for introduction. 2013-109 deals with taxi cabs. We're going to set the public hearing on the 8th, and we've got another work session on the 11th on it. So if you have any comments on it or amendments you need to make, send them to me so we can see what type of amendments we can build into this document. I appreciate Dean Gates on this with the Municipal Attorney's Office. He's just been absolutely excellent working with him on drafting this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I misspoke. That work session, or that committee meeting for the Ethics and Elections Committee is scheduled for October 16th.
Thank you, Mr. Trombley.
So, Mr. Trump, just to confirm, not this Thursday?
That's correct, Mr. Honeman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Flynn, are you on the line now?
I am, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Do you have a report?
Just a reminder that AMATS was canceled for this month, so there will be no meeting on Thursday.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn.
I just had a little blip, but I seem to still be on.
You are. You're still with us. Thank you. We are now at the addendum to the agenda and laid on the table items, and the chair would take a motion to incorporate.
Move to incorporate. Second.
Any objection to incorporation of the addendum as well as laid on the table items? Seeing none, I will read the addendum as well as the laid on the table items into the record. We have 9C2 under bid awards, AM 551, vehicles for use at the Anchorage Regional Landfill. We have 9D, new business, item 10, AM 584, time and attendance software and hardware maintenance and support for Kronos, Inc. We have 9D11, AM 549, Library Information Services. We have 9D12, AM number 550. It's the Brentwood Drive 79th Avenue Area Drainage Project. 9D13, AM 552, Generation Repowering Engineering Services. We have 9F6, AO108, suspending the ordinance as provided by Chapter 3.02 and submitting a referendum on AO 37S2 to the voters at the regular municipal election scheduled for April 1, 2014. That is scheduled for a public hearing on 10/8/13, and it's accompanied by AM 547. We have 9F7, AO110, suspending AO 37S2 as amended, pending the outcome of a referendum to be held at the regular election in April of 2015, scheduled for public hearing on 10/8/13. We have 9F8, AO109, permitting of taxi cabs, limousines, and vehicles for hire and licensing of chauffeurs and dispatch services, scheduled for public hearing on 10/8/13. 9F9, AO111, non-competitive disposal of a perpetual storm drain easement on Heritage Land Bank parcel number 3-010. That is scheduled for public hearing on 10/8/13, and it is accompanied by AM 553. And 9F10, AR 250, State of Alaska Grant and Senate Bill 18, scheduled for public hearing on 10/8/13, accompanied by AM 554. And 12B, an appearance request, Jim Barnett and Susan Duck. And laid on the table items, we have on 9B5, which is AR 251, granting a temporary conditional use permit for uses involving the sale of alcoholic beverages at the Alaska Native Heritage Center. 9F11, AO 112, suspending AO 2013-37S2 as amended, pending the outcome of a referendum to be held no later than the regular election of April 2015. Public hearing on 10/8/13. 9F12 is AR 252, State of Alaska Grant and Senate Bill 18. Public hearing on 10/8/13, accompanied by AM number 555. And under 14A2 is a AIM 105, which is review of AO 94, Public Safety Advisory Commission's resolution. This is all of the addendum and laid on the table items. I would have a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
I would now ask for any items to be pulled, beginning with you, Mr. Birch.
So I believe we'll be pulling item, let's see, looking for the number here. Okay. You may not need to pull.
Nothing like a little stress to make it harder to
Actually,
find.
we're going to do a postponement on it. It's later in the agenda, though, so go ahead.
Okay.
I'm good, thank you.
Ms. Dembowski.
9F7. And that's the only one, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Steele.
I have no item.
Mr. Starr.
No items.
Mr. Flynn.
Nothing, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Trombley.
9 Charlie 2, 9 Delta 12, and 9 Delta 13, all on the addendum.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Honeman.
Laid on the table, 9B Bravo 5 for an explanation. That's it.
Ms. Johnston,
No items, thank you.
Mr. Trainee.
It's a question. Pull item F11, and item F7's already been pulled. I want to deal with both of those because I think there's a problem with the title.
Okay. I'll go back and review the items that I show that have been pulled. We've got 9B5, 9C2, 9D12, and D13, 9F7, and 11. Any items that I missed? Seeing none, please vote on approving the consent agenda. I need a screen that I can pull up. Please vote. Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously. We have before us item 9B5.
Move to approve.
Let me read that into the
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
the minutes as soon as I find it. 9B5 is AR 251, granting a temporary conditional use permit for uses involving the sale of alcoholic beverages at the Alaska Native Heritage Center. Okay, Mr. Honeman?
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Honeman?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it just came to our attention yesterday, the applicant of a conditional use permit change, which will come before the body next month, was doing a check. They had 16 permits they could pull for their operation under the current conditional use. They were doing their count, realized that one of their petitioners or one of their vendors had applied for a license they didn't need, but that puts them at risk of violating their current conditional use. So they didn't want to be in violation, so they asked for an interim approval for this conditional use, and it seems appropriate. All the information is on the front and back. And we do have representatives here from the Alaska Native Heritage Center if any of my colleagues have any questions. Approval.
Okay, I see no one in the queue, so please vote. Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 9C2, AM 551, vehicle for use, the Anchorage Regional Landfill.
I don't want to move to approve this yet, just because of my concern is that under the funding source, it's 2014 to 2021. It's subject to appropriation. So, and I apologize for not asking this question in the email before, but
Yeah, we need a motion to approve, Mr. Trombley. Then you can.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Question?
So my question is to Ms. Mahoney. We're approving this, but yet over $900,000 is yet subject to appropriation. I'm just wondering, how do we approve something where the money has yet to be appropriated?
Through the chair, I need a minute to review the document. Hold on.
We can move on and we can come back to it.
That's fine. Let's go ahead and we'll give Ms. Mahoney time to take a quick look. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Trombley, may I address Mr. Trombley?
Yes, you may.
That's why the statement subject to appropriation is there, and we have that situation pretty often, and that's why subject to appropriation is there, because if we don't appropriate it, then it's not happening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Gray-Jackson. Does that answer your question, Mr. Trombley?
Not really, because we're recommending the award for a certain amount of money, but not all the money's been appropriated. So how can we recommend the award to somebody who we don't have the money for?
Ms. Mahoney has the answer.
Yes, this is for a contract that covers 2 years, 2013 and 2014. And so the approval is for the contract itself and for the 2011 and 2012, those capital monies have already been approved. But for 2014, when you approve the capital budget for next year, then it would be construed that this type of funding would be able to fund this contract.
So is it a regular policy to assume the money will be there? What if it isn't there?
If it isn't approved, then
We just
the
canceled
2014 portion would not be funded, and that purchase would not occur.
Okay, all right. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Seeing no one else in the queue, please vote. Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 9D12, AM 550, Brentwood Drive, 79th Avenue Area Drainage Project.
Move to approve. I inadvertently pulled this one, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
As soon as I can pull the screen up, we'll vote. Please vote. Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Carries unanimously. We have before us item 9D13, AM 552, Generation Powering Engineering Services. Mr. Trombley?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, Ms. Mahoney, again, this one also has the funding source of capital subject to appropriation, $6.9 million. As we know, the state's capital, I'm assuming this would come from the capital budget. Our budget or the state, I don't know, I'm assuming that would come from us. But again, I just have a challenge with we're forward funding things. But we're assuming the money's going to be there. That's a lot of money.
Through the chair, the response is the same, Mr. Trombley.
So if the money wasn't there, just the work wouldn't get done. That change order number 3 wouldn't get done if it didn't. What would happen? What would we do? Because obviously it's needed, or else it wouldn't be before us.
If you don't approve the 2014 budget, then the funding would not be available for this change order.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Starr?
And I don't mind that strategy through the chair, Ms. Mahoney, on a front-end loader or a pickup truck, but we're talking about a fairly sizable civic project at the power plant, and I'm not sure that you could potentially undo it. And I look at some of the exampling where we've had at the port with the expectation of future monies. If you don't mind, I'd like Mr. Posey to kind of come up and talk about his cash flow needs and alternate funding sources, perhaps from the ratepayers. Mr. Posey, do you understand Mr. Trombley's question about anticipation or the fact that what if the money didn't show up? How would you punt? Let's put it to you that way in the sports analogy. How would you get through it with the technical support requirements that we're approving?
Through the chair, some of the member Trombley, the member Starr, we fully expect to be able to fund this. We are now operating on these construction projects by using the money that we're borrowing on 180 days or whatever. Our bond rating was confirmed at S&P for A+. We have a teleconference with Fitch next week. Expect to have that confirmed as A+. So the ability, I think, to get our money for this project and have it funded is basically based on all the work that's gone on before. If we don't fund this new, we have to fund baling wire and tape for the old, which will be more than this over a 8 to 10 year period.
Well, it's not going to be us not funding it. It's a matter of the funding source not being available. With the, you mentioned the bonding. Municipal bond markets aren't the flavor that they once were in terms of that. Is that the case with power generation facilities and the requirements for funding and infrastructure? Have you stayed on the money market?
I don't think that we should have a problem in borrowing on short-term notes as well as rolling all of this into bond funding in 2016. Has not been a problem for MLMP. We still own substantial, the third largest gas reserves in the Cook Inlet, as well as cash reserves of over pretty close to $100 million. Our ability to fund this, given our financial balance sheet, I think is fairly firm.
Ms. Mahoney, have we done it this way before? I guess I've tried to watch the funding streams as well, but you know, when we had sort of that commercial paper crisis, I don't want to call it a crisis, but we had a commercial paper concern about several months ago, perhaps, in the port discussions on their open line of credit. Is that similar to this equation, or why don't we have a firm funding source for something? Basically, it's not insignificant amount of money, but it's not a lot of money. It seems like we would have a firm funding source before we went down this road. Why don't we?
Excuse me here, I didn't have my microphone on. The way we're managing the funding of this project is we are reimbursing expenditures that actually occur historically with the commercial paper funding. By doing it this way, we end up saving an interest expense and we incur less debt on an overall basis. So we anticipate in 2014 that we will issue additional commercial paper based on the actual expenditures that have occurred. And so it's a looking backward in time in terms of the debt management program rather than issuing debt today in anticipation of future spending.
The situation where it may not go as well received on project management, and I'm not accusing that at this point, of course, because the project is on track and on budget and all the other things, but when you look at a project that doesn't do well, does the commercial paper market have a lot of other choices in the United States markets in particular where they wouldn't have to fund us because, or you know, do we run a risk of that? Where a project doesn't quite go to par, do the commercial markets kind of stub their nose at us? Is that what you're seeing?
Oh, no, not at all with MLMP. MLMP has really strong financials. We have a line of credit available for the commercial paper program. I think it's $185 million with two separate banks. There is no concern at all. It's just a matter of when we request the funding for these type of expenditures.
Well, your explanation on taking it out of sort of the municipal cash pool funds and then asking for reimbursement. So in theory, we do have a funding source, and it's the fallback to the municipal cash pool, which is $580-some million. Is that a fair estimation of a CFO?
It varies every single day.
I get
in
that.
Regard.
Yeah, but
I mean, in August, it's usually around $1 billion.
Certainty in funding is what we're looking for, and if you say we have it, I believe you.
We are certain in our funding here.
Just keep it on budget, Mr. Posey, and we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your interest, Mr. Trombley.
Mr. Trombley?
Mr. Posey, everyone up here supports the project. I support the project, and I would continue to support funding for the project. I recognize its importance. My only concern is that is the precedent that it sets to some degree is that the administration puts together some sort of budget, a capital budget, an operational budget for us, at which we take it, and then we manipulate it to the degree that we do, and then we pass it. My concern at times is that by forward funding something, it's taking it out of the Assembly's hands. We're locked, in one way, we're locked into this. We can't really mess with this money. Not that we would, but if it's not this project, maybe it is something else. Maybe it is a front-end load or something that's not as important. That's just my concern, is that we're locking the Assembly into something that maybe we don't want to fund, not specifically this project, but something else. So that's only my only concern, Ms. Mahoney. So that's all, Mr. Chairman. I do urge support.
Thank you. There's no one else in the queue. Thank you, Mr. Posey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please vote. Mr. Flynn?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. We have now before us item 9F7, AO number 110, AO 37 as amended pending the outcome of a referendum to be held at the regular election in April of 2015. Ms. Dembowski, I believe you pulled this.
I pulled it, Mr. Chairman, because I have no interest in introducing it.
Okay. Thank you. We have now before us item 9F11, which is AO 112, suspending AO 37S2 as amended, pending the outcome of a referendum to be held no later than the regular election in April of 2015. And Mr. Trombley, or Mr.
So that was
Trainee?
pulled by me, sir.
Move to introduce.
Now can I talk about it?
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Technically, Mr. Trainee, I don't believe there's anything to discuss. It's introduced.
I should be at least discuss it because I'm concerned about the title, sir. If you don't want this to go forward, fine. But I really think they need to look at the title. You need to let me talk to both attorneys because I think we have a problem here. I'm
Point of
happy
order,
this
Mr.
thing goes
Chairman.
down the hill.
Yes.
Point of order.
Ms. Dembowski.
This has been introduced and it's been seconded and third. It's not up for debate tonight.
Mr. Chairman, you're not concerned about its validity?
Mr. Trainee, we will check the title.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would like to be added as a sponsor, please.
We've got 3 to introduce, but if you want on as a sponsor, very well. That completes our consent agenda. We now have before us item 11A, which is AR number 236, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving an alcoholic beverage conditional use for a package store use and license number 4948 in the I-1 district for Walmart Stores, Inc., doing business as Walmart Supermarket or Supercenter number 4359 at 7405 DeBar Road within Creekside Subdivision Tract B, generally located north of DeBar Road and west of Creekside Drive in Anchorage. This item is before us for action. Mr. Honeman? There is, okay.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve on the floor. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously. Oh, Mr. Trainee? Motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 11B, AO number 36, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code chapters 11.10, 11.20, 11.30, and 11.40 regarding the licensing and regulations of taxi cabs, limousines, and vehicles for hires, chauffeurs, and dispatch services, dissolving the Anchorage Transportation Commission, defining new limited and special taxi cab permits. This item is before us.
Move to postpone indefinitely.
Second.
Any objection?
And just for the public's awareness, that's because Mr. Trainee has worked on a different version, and we'll be taking that one up instead of this, so it's better to just kill this one off.
Mr. Trainee, are you in the queue?
He took care of what I needed. Thank
He
you.
beat you to it. Okay. That completes. We need to vote. Yes, please vote. Mr. Flynn.
Yes.
Thank you. That completes our old business. We will be at ease until 6 o'clock before we can take up any other business. Pardon? Yes, we're taking a dinner break now.
I'll call back.
Thanks, Patrick. Assembly appearance request. We've got Jim Barnett and Susan Dutt here to give us an update on the Anchorage Centennial. 12B.
Ready?
Mr. Barnett.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Assembly. We came back in June after your stupendous decision in April to fund $500,000, and I promised you we'd come back quarterly, and we plan to come back again right after Christmas. But we've accomplished a great deal in the time since I saw you in June. The awards have now been made, and we have 3 very important projects underway. And in addition, we have received a considerable support from the Rasmussen Foundation, and we are beginning our private fundraising effort. We already have a little bit from the Alaska Historical Society, so I believe the project's taking off very well. And that I'd like to give the rest of my time to Nina Kemple with the Humanities Forum, and she will describe the handout. You have 2 handouts, by the way, on your desk. One that Susan prepared, which describes all the approved projects, and the other one that Nina will describe now. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kemple.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the Assembly. I have put together a brief packet. We don't have time to go through it all, but it was meant to provide you with information sort of in more detail. But I think if we kind of start at the very high level, we have all of our 3 major legacy projects up and running. That's the book, the app, and the documentary. All of those teams are well underway and progressing nicely to the deliverable for 2 of them of next April for the book and the documentary, and then 2 years from now for the online app. We also are kicking out, we just started the community grants process. We're really excited about this. This has really been infused by both your support and the Rasmussen Foundation support. We can make this really big and something that's actually a lasting legacy. We are getting, as you'll see from the list that Susan handed out, but certainly a testament to people that are walking into my office every day, a really wide breadth of people coming in, everyone from the quilting organization that wants to do a centennial quilting effort, all the way to the zoo that wants to be part of it, to the botanical garden. So a really wide, diverse group of people that are really interested in pursuing grant opportunities. But I would like to focus most of my time today is just to give you a brief update, as I think we said we would in June. So if you flip to page 4, I've outlined, as per Assembly Chairwoman Johnston, she asked for a detailed budget, so I have broken it down both on income and expense of budget. And I can say also, in addition to the numbers, you can see the $500,000 from this group, the $500,000 from Rasmussen, and then a small but not inconsequential donation from our grant from the Alaska Historical Commission. On the expense side, you can see the 3 major projects totaling out to be just a little bit under $300,000 in total. The Centennial documentary being the biggest of those because it just it's a little bit more cost intensive to produce that. Then a bit of a contingency fee for cost overruns, which tends to always happen in these types of year-long grants, and then you can see the $500,000 that we plan to spend on the delivery of community grants, and then some $50,000 on the marketing support costs. This is to create and really get enthusiasm across the city around the Centennial as it starts to progress. A small amount in for the museum, but a much bigger partnership with the museum as we move forward. They've been very supportive of our efforts and allowing us to use a lot of their historic materials. And then finally, the sort of admin and financial management piece that is going to the forum. So with that, to the book, the online app, and the documentary, we've already paid out just under $90,000. So they're all have their first payments and they're off and running and well into spending against accomplishing their deliverable next year. And I will leave the rest sort of as backup for you, but I did provide descriptions of all of it.
We've got some questions for you, starting with Mr. Honeman.
Thank you for the presentation, and I love the budget expense. I know that the community grants haven't been specified, but I know that you'll do due diligence on making sure they get there. And to that end, I'm hopeful that someone from the East Anchorage has approached the commission and talked about the importance. I mean, we've got Centennial Park Campground. I mean, Centennial's in the name, and Bicentennial Park that goes around through our area in the east. And so I'm really hoping that we can get some participation from the East. If you haven't been approached by them, I definitely will be working hard to get some folks to contact you. So
Yeah, that's a great point.
thank you.
Ms. Johnston.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the budget. I appreciate it. And on page second page, and Mr. Barnett and Ms. Beck know about my concern as far as the interpretive project, the Downtown and Ship Creek Historic Interpretive Project. Is to be arranged. And I guess it's from the historical group, and I just want to encourage that they discuss what they're going to do and try to use the benefit of the interpretive signs that are already in place that have been there since the 80s. I know you know Nan Elliott, and she did those signs, and there's duplications of, I think there's 3 of each of those signs somewhere in storage somewhere. So it'd be great if they want to add to it, but let's not reinvent the wheel on that one. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Mr. Starr.
I was hoping for just a brief explanation of this is labeled official events. And I hate to be ignorant here, but some of the events are already coming, and so is everything going to have an association to? Is there an underlying theme now from now on, or that? And I have a question as it relates to the answer.
Senator Starr, official events means that these people have applied using a centennial form and said they wanted to have an official event associated with the Anchorage Centennial, and this is kind of the heart of our project and this $500,000 funding that you see from Rasmussen. These events, we assume, are going to apply for the use of the $500,000. By being named official, though, they haven't been guaranteed anything at this juncture.
And here's the question that comes with that as we start. There's some I know the Ski Racing Association and Nationals, for example, in March of 2014. Do we run a risk of sort of losing the big cannon, the launch, and the whole thing because we sort of have a diluted celebration? Not it's a good celebration. It's just it starts in February of 2014 and goes for a long time. I guess that would be my only fear is that if we're looking for a centennial celebration, is it an ongoing just awareness, or are you seeing some big deal?
So. I'm going to answer that twofold. First, we find our grantees that come to the Alaska Humanities Forum take at least a year to complete a project. Yeah. So we really do have to, so if we're backing up and actually launching our fall opening for grants projects, really those aren't done until next fall.
Understand.
At the very earliest. So we really tried to plan backwards from the actual centennial celebration. So most of them are actually, as you say, kind of coming to life right at that time. But the second part of your question is, there are some, within that $500,000 that are going to go to community grants, there will be some big ones, which we fund at a very, very high level, and there'll be some very small ones that, are applying for a couple $100s to do a day at the Park Strip celebrating culture or something like that. And we can deal with those differently. There's 2 major funding processes with very selected, hand-picked people that will sit on the selection committee for the formal projects, but there's also some money available that if Jim Barnett has a good idea, he doesn't have to wait till the next funding or wait until the centennial to be able to accomplish that.
I don't want to speak for the entire body, but those big ones, that major corporate sponsor that wants to anchor the coolest thing ever in Anchorage for the centennial and needs a fair amount of anchor money, that would be something that you would want to come back to us for and say, hey, guess what? We just got a call from, whoever, Snoop Dogg or somebody really cool, and he wants to do an exclusive concert and says, run it. And so A. So I guess that's really the message I want to take away, because I'm fearful that we're sending a message that isn't optimistic. You can note our cautious, our fiscal concern early has started to evolve. You're doing what you said you would do and bring that the Humanities Forum anchoring as the lead agency, if you will, in the organization is a positive thing. And so I want to communicate the message that, you know, we're being stingy a little bit here with the gratitude, but I don't want to send that message away in a negative light. So by all means, keep giving us that positive thing, because I think we're turning the corner. The budget, the programs, that it was just, how can we start to promote it would be my next question for another day. Thank you.
Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank Jim and Nina and Susan for all your hard work and your willingness to play a major role in making this all happen. I mean, I think it's really, really wonderful, and I congratulate you for doing what you're doing, and I look forward to attending some of the events. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Mr. Honeman.
I just want to echo the thanks again for all the hard work. I'm a bit ashamed that I haven't done a little bit more lifting myself, and I commit to working at least in the East Anchorage area, trying to get some folks to commit to being a major part of our centennial celebration. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just add,
Comment?
Mr. Honeman, that this list is still open. The Advisory Commission is still interested in additional projects, and as Nina has explained in here, the funding is just beginning for these projects.
I have no doubt. Thank you, Mr. Burnett.
Thank you. We next have an assembly reappearance request by the Anchorage Unitarian Universal Fellowship. They would like to present an annual payment in lieu of taxes. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Assembly. My name is Sam Kaysen. I'm the president of the Board of Directors of the Anchorage Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, and with me tonight is Kaylin Saxon, who is one of our members. I have a letter and a check to present, and I'd like to read the letter for you very quickly, if I might. It's short. The letter is addressed to the City of Anchorage. As Oliver Wendell Holmes said, taxes are the price we pay for a civilized society. The IRS has this quote inscribed above the entrance to their headquarters at 1111 Constitution Avenue. We, the members of the Anchorage Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, value the civilized society that we share. We are pleased to present our voluntary payment in lieu of taxes, as we have done for most of the 50 years we have been a church in the city of Anchorage. We present this pilot in support of the cost of city maintenance, road plowing, police protection, and education in our community. We recognize how we as a congregation, as property owners, and how we as individuals benefit from living in an enriched community with municipal services, and we value not only the schools, fire, and police protection, the infrastructure like roads and drainage, but also the parks where we hold fellowship picnics and take our children into nature, sport, and play, and the oversight that keeps buildings safe. In making this payment in lieu of taxes, we honor our founders by continuing their commitment to share in the care of our beautiful city. We do this also in affirmation of the separation of church and state that safeguards religious freedom in all of our nation. Thank you to the Assembly and to the Mayor for your work in sustaining this municipality and the people of our city in peace and equity. Thank you very much.
Mr. Trainee.
Sir, every year I sit here and watch you come forward and do that. I wish you'd get some more ministers to come down and do the same thing.
Well,
thank you for being here. You set a good example for everybody else in Anchorage.
Thank you for that vote of confidence, sir.
Mr. Honeman.
I echo the same sentiment. Even though both the federal laws and state and municipal laws state you don't have to, I think it's excuse me, shows me that you're a great partner in our community and great citizens, and so thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I would say that our minister, Gary Holthouse, wanted to be here tonight, but he's leading a service at the fellowship this evening and couldn't make it. So I will convey your thanks to him. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now have before us item 13A, AO number 37, an ordinance to the Anchorage Municipal Assembly dedicating certain municipal land identified as parcel 006-401-03-000, Lot 1, Muldoon Estates, the Muldoon Greenhouse, located at 1301 Muldoon Road for permanent public park and recreational purposes. This item is before us for public testimony this evening. However, if you're here, I want to let you know that this is going to be postponed. And do we have anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Hearing none, we will continue public testimony on this. Mr. Trombley?
Move to postpone to February 25th, 2014.
Thank you, Mr. Trombley.
And the reason is because in order to dedicate this land as a park, it has to first be part of a master plan, and that master plan is yet to be completed, which is the East Side District Plan. And so I want to give the district plan plenty of time to be completed. Hopefully we'll get it completed by February, but if not, we'll kick this down the road. But the reason behind introducing this preemptively was to stress to the Assembly and to let the community know that we're very serious about this land becoming a park. So we'll continue to kick it down the road until we get the East Side District Plan completed.
Mr. Horniman?
And thank you for Mr. Trombley's explanation as well. The reason, not for our colleagues to think that the community doesn't care, we've been in constant dialogue that this would be postponed because of that reason. So it's not for lack of communication that they're not here. It's deliberate. Thank you.
Thank you. Any objection to the postponement? Seeing none, this item will be postponed until... Oh, Mr. Flynn?
No objection, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Starr.
if it's appropriate now, I just want to put on the record, oftentimes we have a challenge from a code section or a legal perspective that some of the actions we try to take don't meet muster. So as it relates to this parkland dedication, they sometimes get caught up in the semantics. Could we get a legal summary on our ability to actually do this between now and, say, February? I haven't had the interpretation that it's not a legal action, but I know we've tried in several other capacities. So just a formal request from the administration to be ready with a legal review of this. Either one, perhaps collectively. There's historical perspective, I think, that Ms. Tucker brings to the table on previous actions, and your take, perhaps, Mr. Wheeler, would be from the administration's perspective on the willingness. I know several folks can dedicate parkland. So designated and dedicated being the operative words. And so just as we had some free time tonight, it was on my mind that we're doing it correctly through this action, or Mr. Trombley's on track would be helpful to know. Thank you. Thank you for that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We now have before us item 14A. Prior to reading this, I also want to give another heads up to the audience that I understand from the sponsor he is intending to postpone this one as well for some additional possible work being done on it. So if you are here to testify, I would suggest you wait and testify on a final document. We have before us 14A, AO number 94, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code Section 8.40.040 to recognize and allow additional police false alarms within a 12-month period as no-charge events. This item is before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? This item will be continued for public testimony. It's before the body. Mr. Trainee.
Mr. Chairman, can we get an opinion from the Chief of Police relative to the impact of this upon his department?
I believe that's part of what Mr. Birch is intending.
Well, no specific,
Yep.
that's done. Thank you.
Yes.
We received that on Friday, I believe.
Okay.
I didn't see it yet, so appreciate it.
We need a motion, Mr. Birch.
Moves to postpone, and what would be an appropriate date, Mr. Chairman, as far as your calendar is concerned?
The 8th.
Third week in October?
Not the next meeting. The 20, I believe it's the 25th,
22nd.
October 22nd.
22nd of October.
Second.
Okay. Any objection? Mr. Flynn?
No objection, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. No objection from the body. This will be postponed to the meeting of October the 22nd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Birch. We now have before us item 14B, AO number 99, an ordinance authorizing a seasonal 3-year lease with options to extend between the municipality of Anchorage and Alaska Bikers Advocating Training and Education, an Alaska nonprofit organization, to use a portion of a parcel legally described as Track 1 Municipal Tudor Road Complex located at 3500 Tudor Road in Anchorage. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body for action.
Move to approve.
Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Okay. That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 14C, AR number 240, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating a federal health and human service grant award through the State of Alaska Department of Health and Social Services in the amount of $608,681 to the State Direct Federal Pass-Through Grants Funds 231, Public Transportation Department for coordinated senior transportation services within the municipality of Anchorage. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body for action.
Move to approve.
Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 14D, AR number 241, a resolution reappropriating a State of Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities grant in the amount of $152,000 to the State Direct Federal Pass-Through Grant Funds 231 from the Public Transportation Capital Improvement Fund 485 in the Public Transportation Department for public transportation services within the municipality of Anchorage. This item is before the body for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body for action.
Move to approve.
Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. We have before us item 14E, AR number 244, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating State of Alaska grants in Senate Bill 18 when tendered of $70,265,744 to various funds and departments. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all?
You want to testify, ma'am?
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman. My name is Robin Bronin, and I believe $20 million of this $70 million is for a proposed road construction to extend into the UMed district, and I'm here to either request that $20 million be set aside for further discussion or to request that the Assembly refuse the funding. And my reasons for this request are threefold. One, it's been a flawed process. That $20 million was included in the state budget without appropriate public process. All of the community councils in the area have opposed that road construction. Two, there have been traffic studies about that road construction, and the traffic studies show that it would only add or save people about 2 minutes in time to build that road into the UMed area. 3, the UMed plan is currently being updated, and so as you did with the previous ordinance where you wanted a further study about the greater impact of having the road, I would request that you postpone making a decision so that you can get greater information about the impact of the road on the area. And then finally, I would request, it's a wetlands area, that the municipality get a legal summary about the implications of building a road in a wetlands area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body for action.
Move to approve.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to divide the question on approval of AR 213-244. If I may continue, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
AR 213-244.
Ms. Gray Jackson, I need a second.
Second.
Thank you. AO 213-244 represents a series of project fund approvals from state grants that we received, and I'm moving to divide the question so that the $20 million allocation for the grant at the bottom of page 4 of 6, and I'll pass these out in a moment, of this project is subject to a separate vote. And I'd like to see that happen, and I'd like to go on to say thank you to our constituent who testified this evening, because for years, Mr. Chairman, and to my colleagues, even under the Fink administration, when I was staff to the Assembly, the community didn't want this project then, and it's come back again in the form of a $20 million appropriation. I hate to turn down money that we receive from the state, but we've heard loud and clear from our constituents, and it would just be wrong, and I just can't sit up here and vote to accept this money when our constituents have blatantly told us that it's the wrong thing to do right now. So with that said, to divide the question on line 24 and 35 on page 1 of the resolution, and lines 1 and 2 on page 2 of the resolution are reduced by $20 million. And on the UMet Northern Access that's listed on the bottom of page 505 will be subject, Mr. Chairman, to a separate vote. And I've passed out copies showing the reduction. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We've got a motion, and I have 2 people in the queue. Are you speaking to the motion? Mr. Starr.
I don't support the change in the funding request, and I guess I appreciate your constituent base, Ms. Gray Jackson, but my constituent base needs to get to town. And so when we travel from the upper quadrants, either from East Anchorage, Eagle River, Chugiak, we have no significant way to bridge that. So your constituent base says no, but those folks that try to come to employment centers in there past Providence or past some of that, Northern Lights is plugged, Glen Highway past the Dodge dealership is plugged. We need an extra route, and it's time for that. The wetlands discussion, I don't remember it being significantly breached when we did the Native Medical Center upgrades in the UMed district plan. We managed that very well. I was on planning and zoning when the UMed plan came through. And there's some validity in the UMed plan, but there's also the community outreach that needs to occur, and a significant amount of money in this grant will do that. I did my homework today a little bit in it, and if you'll look on page 6 of 6 of the AM, there's a asterisk comment, and I'll read it because I think it's important. The asterisk comment says it's the intent of the legislature that the municipality of Anchorage and the Department of Transportation and Public Facilities work with the public, including both the community and the UMed organizations, and consider their input and desire on the design, construction, and mitigation elements of the project. We're not making that up. That actually came from the state as the
Point of order, Mr.
as
Chairman.
the directive.
I'm not sure this is, the question is.
To divide the question, and
I don't think it's debatable, though. I think it's much like earlier's motion. I think it's something we vote on or not.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Mr. Chairman, if I may.
I thought I had the floor, Mr. Chairman.
You do.
We need a ruling on it.
I'm going to ask direction from legal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Tucker?
Mr. Chairman, if you think my comments were not directed towards the motion in front of us of that, then you can correct me. But my
Mr.
point-
Starr, all I'm getting opinion is it's my belief that you have a right to speak. It
I'm
is a
happy with the
motion.
chair's ruling, but if
Yeah.
you're indicative of my comments straying from the motion at hand, which is to bifurcate the question, I will do that. But I'm indicative of my last comment, which is my meat of my discussion, is the legislature from Juneau doesn't want us to bifurcate the question. They want us to take the money and engage in the conversation. So
Okay.
I'll end with that. Thank you.
Thank you. On the motion, Mr. Birch?
I speak against bifurcation. I think this
Point
is...
of order, Mr. Chairman. What was just brought to your attention, and by our attorney, and I'd like to hear her speak, that
Ms.
this
Tucker.
motion is not debatable. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Tucker?
Through the chair, my reading of Robert's rules and the notes that I have provided indicate that Assemblymember Gray Jackson is correct, as is Mr. Honeman, and the motion to bifurcate is not debatable.
Very good. Then I'm going to ask everyone to please vote. Mr. Flynn?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you restate what we're voting on?
We are voting on bifurcating on page 4, 14DC-040, the UMed District Northern Access, $20 million out of Fund 231. That motion fails 6-5. The original motion is back before us. And I show Ms. Gray Jackson in the queue.
I'll pass, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Horniman?
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all. Mr. Starr, no offense. I just was so we could vote on whether or not we're going to vote on both. That's okay. I just want to, and I appreciate Mr. Starr's comments from earlier, and I take those under advisement, that there may be a day, and there may be a day that we need to look at an extension for transportation purposes, that we're already a city of about 300,000, where when this was discussed earlier, it was significantly less in population in the last 2 to 3 decades. So we may very well get to that point, and it may very well come to pass that there's a route going through that section. But I believe my colleagues are right. As we go through our community councils, and I know that you go to yours as well, and this would be akin to having, and I'm going to go apples to oranges here, a business or something in your area that has been repeatedly resisted, and then the rest of the body overruling your voting, even though your representation. I know that sometimes people feel that way, but we have been seriously approached by several community councils and people in the district who are against the way the process is going, and it seems much like putting the cart before the horse. I'm appreciative of the legislature recognizing that they need funding for this project, but there's been very little, as you say, communication and outreach. And if they wanted to come up with $1 million or $2 million to do the outreach, I would say that that's probably in order. But $20 million is enough to probably put quite a bit of that roadway in. And so I think we are outside of the process of making sure the community understands and is communicated with and listened to. And I vote against this particular one.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make the comment that, on a personal note, I don't have any issue with accepting this $20 million, but it's not about me personally. And none of the decisions that I make sitting here in this chair is about me. It's about the people who live in this community. And when I took my oath of office, I took that oath, and what I said was, I promised to represent the citizens of this community to the best of my ability. And this evening, I had the ability to have listened to all of the community councils that are represented by this area, to read their resolutions, and to try and do what the community wanted me to do. And I'm so sorry that I wasn't able to make that happen this evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Birch?
This will be a welcomed and well-timed infrastructure improvement. For those of you that were involved or recall the Elmore extension, the Burgaw extension, and the years it took to secure that, it finally was a state project that funded that. And that basically enables my constituents in South Anchorage access to the hospital for the physicians that need to have access to the hospital. It's a dramatic improvement. We've got a new sports center going in this vicinity. This project and package is much appreciated, and I think it's going to end up make us a much better community all the way around, and urge approval. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no one else in the queue. Please vote. Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
That motion carries 9-2. That completes our public hearings for this evening. We have no special orders or unfinished agenda. We are at item 17, audience participation. Anyone to testify under audience participation?
That would be, I know, I would be hypocritical.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Assembly, Mr. Mayor. My name is Tom McGrath. I've learned over the last 60 years that the purpose of local government is public safety, which is police and fire, and basic infrastructure. In the 1980s in Anchorage, we had about 185, 190 cops, police officers on the street. In the 90s, under Mayor Mystrom, we added the hillside and added a huge increase in work for the Anchorage Police Department. I remember in 2001-2 area, when the Anchorage Assembly was fairly liberal, Mayor Wirtz wanted to have an academy, and for some reason, we couldn't come up with enough recruits to fill the academy. In 2009, an ordinance was passed, 2009-133, which made it possible that if certain people retired from the police department prior to January 4th, 2014, they would get a huge bump in their rate of retirement pay. During the 2013 budget process, it was talked about that there would be an academy this fall, and the academy was supposed to be 29 people. And the number has been used over and over and over again. And just recently, the police chief says because of one test that recruits can't pass, there's only going to be 19 in the academy instead of 29, where we desperately need the 29. At the current burn rate of 3 police officers retiring every month and possibly 50 retiring at the end of the year, we're going to be down to 190 police officers in Anchorage, which is approximately what we had back in the 1980s when we had 100,000 less population and we did not police the hillside. So what I'm asking is, and I remember Mayor Wirtz talking about this test that they couldn't pass, and now I'm hearing about this test that recruits can't pass. Seems like at 2 times when there's union problems at hand, we can't find recruits to pass tests. We're going to spend the same amount of money for an academy as if we had 29 or 19. So who is running, who's running the asylum? Who's running this that we can't fill an academy? Who's running this that we're going to be down to the same number of police officers that we had when we had 100,000 less population and a much smaller area to police? I think that we should mandate that no academy happen until there's 29 recruits that are going to be trained by that academy. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Have some pictures.
Just hand it to the clerk.
Hi, my name is Susan Pacillo Kennedy, Pacillo, Kennedy, like it sounds. I reside at 1105 East Clatt Road, Anchorage, 99515. Our house has been there since 1955, and it survived the 1964 earthquake. It did not survive the storm on September 19th and 20th, 2012. It succumbed to hydrostatic pressure and our east basement wall failed, flooding our house. I would like to bring to your attention the lack of municipal services on East Clat and the problems that we have endured because of the lack of proper drainage and the lack of maintenance. For 13 years, I have been asking someone in the municipality to deal with the drainage issues. Having no action taken for the last 13 years, despite my advocacy, is an example why people don't trust their government. I want someone to stop telling me what can't be done, and I want someone to start telling me what can be done. When we purchased our home in 2000, December, East Clat was a quiet, older neighborhood. In 1999, Birch Trail Circle duplexes started going in with 46 units. In 2001, 2002, Birch Knoll condominiums with 94 units went in. In 2003, Spyglass Hill condominiums went in with 26 units. This is a total of 186 units between 1999 and 2003. East Clat Road is less than a quarter of a mile long and has no significant improvements in the last 14 years that I know of. Our house now intersects with the water flow of Birch Trail Circle, our south wall, and the downhill water flow of Birch Knoll condominiums, our east wall. In August 2002, which is the first picture that you'll see there, I took pictures of the Mud River flowing towards my home. And that's when I started calling the Muni with my concerns of future water problems. I can't tell you how many times in the past 11 years I've called, but I can tell you there are a couple of people in street maintenance that understand the problem here. And there are a couple of people who don't really care. I have been told we don't do preventative maintenance. Is the water coming in your neighbor's house yet? Call us when it does. There's 3 people ahead of you. There isn't funding for improvement on this street. You'll have to put in speed bump type swell in your driveways to divert the water flow. Oh, we're asking the residents to clean out any culverts in their area. How about we can store all that snow in your yard because it's an easement? Never mind the fact that our house has now become the low point. Since Hurricane Katrina, flood insurance has been federalized. When we pay our premiums, it's actually going to FEMA. FEMA does not cover everything when you have a catastrophe. They don't cover everything it takes to bring your dwelling to what it was prior to the catastrophe. Consequently, for an entire year, we've lived in a house that needed reconstruction. I now fear the sound of rain, and it's no way to live. 3 weeks ago, all of the parties involved finally got together and started fixing our house. FEMA's covering $87,000 to excavate and replace the wall that failed and install new French drains and waterproofing on the east and south walls. It does not cover our flooring, utilities to keep our house dry and warm for the entire year, all the sandbags that I have bought personally placed. It does not cover replacing my front and backyards that were completely organic and beautiful, nor the removal and replacement of our front and back porches. We are already $40,000 out of our pocket and looking at another $30,000. After this house is fixed, it will be subject to flooding in the future because the cause of this problem has not been addressed. And our house is not the only one that's been affected. I am 55 years old, I am exhausted, and I refuse to shovel one more yard of dirt, place one more sandbag, or suck up one more ounce of water. I don't know who's going to fix the problem. I've called street maintenance, risk management, the ombudsman, and now I am here. And I'm hoping that the buck stops here and someone here will respond to the situation.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. Mr. Traney.
Susan, it's nice to see you, but you don't have your wings on you this time. I'm sorry about this, bringing you down here. Mr. Mayor, can we get her some relief, or at least have the administration look into this, figure out what the problem is and how we can rectify it?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you could get back to us, we'd appreciate it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Susan.
Mr. Honeman.
Susan, I honestly hadn't seen or have any documents from previous instances. I know you say you have the list of here, so I'm hoping you can help the administration by reconstructing some sort of a contact. Maybe you've made notes or emails or some exchanges with someone from street maintenance or public works or somewhere. So if you can be of help, then they can perhaps point to the right direction to get some relief on this.
Yep, I have them.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, who should she contact to work with?
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We're sending the photos over to Ron Thompson, and we'll get an answer back from him on just, if there's something in the CIP going forward, or is there something that can be done immediately?
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. There are no other questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi guys, Michael Todd. Just thought I'd comment on a few things. Might sound like I'm getting a little off track at first, but there's a point to where I'm going. When I was 8 years old, one of the smartest people I ever met sat down, handed me a dollar bill, and he asked me what it was. Well, it's a dollar, but what's that? I said, well, it's a dollar, but what's it worth? $1. Okay, and he proceeded to explain to me the history of the dollar and how it used to be backed by metals of a value that you could get the same amount of that metal based on a coin that was produced made of that metal. And you begin to realize it's an interesting concept that this has changed. And at 8 years old, I was really having a hard time wrapping my brain around this. But we came to the conclusion that the final statement being, $1 is worth only that which you have faith it will provide to you. Period. Nothing more, nothing less. This can carry into other areas of life. With that said, I've seen some things take place here at the Assembly where a lot of people have brought some really relevant information. Some experts have come to make statements that were backed up by nothing. At least not that I was made aware of. Statements that in all reality actually had no basis in fact or reality that we live in. Whether chemicals are absorbed in your system, making contact with your skin, whether the CDC has made recommendations on fluoride being utilized in infant formula. These things are fact, that these things occur, but we had experts stating that there's never been anything like this to be proven. Skin absorbing chemicals by 80% levels. Again, recommendations that infants not be drinking formula made with fluoridated water. These are facts. It's not a question. But these experts that were brought forth, that I'm guessing that these are the same people that we've got influencing perhaps opinions on the Assembly members. That said, I'll leave it at that. But we can then carry into, I was pleased to hear some comments. This nice young lady that was just up here speaking about her problems, maybe she'll get some resolution. That's great. But I ask, what's an Assembly member? What's an Assembly member worth? Only that which you have faith they can provide to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Honeman.
If I might exercise a personal privilege here, we had some students that stuck around for the entire part of this meeting. If they could just real briefly come up and introduce themselves and what school they're from, if that's okay.
Don't be bashful. Thank you, Mr. Honeman. I intended to do that when we came back from break.
Yes, sir. I forgot to ask you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cody Valou from Diamond High School.
Thank you.
My name is Christian Schmo. I'm from Diamond High School.
Thank you.
Xavier Hanna, Diamond High School.
Everybody from my district, go.
Joseph Quinn, East High School.
East Side.
East Side.
East Side.
Hi, I'm Claudia Rabluski, and I'm from Diamond High School. I'm Jenny Quick. I'm from Diamond High School.
I'm Jesse Keller. I'm from Service High School.
Thanks for being here, guys. Ms. Johnston?
I just didn't want you to go rushing through Assembly comments.
No, I'm not. I've got you on my list here.
Okay.
One more. Anyone else under audience participation? If not, Ms. Johnston?
Yes, I'd like to say that we're going to have an Enterprise Committee meeting on Thursday at 11:30. The clerk is going to check as far as what room it will be in City Hall, and this is to discuss the ML&P contract, another contract that will be awarded for the power plant. So this will be Thursday, 11:30, this Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We stand adjourned. Thank you.